So if you're thinking Apple's been pretty boring as of late with the iPhones, do not fret, because we have groundbreaking changes coming to iPhone 17. And when I say groundbreaking, I just mean they're gonna make it thinner, because why not? Essentially, for those out of the loop, the plus size is dead. It's not been selling well, and it's funny because that was brought in as a replacement for the Mini, which was also not selling well. And so what I've learned from this is that we don't really need a fourth iPhone in the range, but Apple thinks otherwise because they've gone back to the drawing boards with a new fourth iPhone. And this time it's a slim model that's basically Johnny Ive's wet dream. So this is rumored to be called the iPhone 17 Air, which yes, would make sense based on what Apple's done in the past, but also do know Air doesn't actually mean thinnest product anymore. For example, the iPad Air is actually thicker than the iPad Pro, so the name has kind of lost its meaning over the years. But yes, for a product like this, Air would make sense. It's going to be crazy thin. We're hearing this could be thinner than the iPhone 6, yes, the bendy iPhone, and apparently it could be 6mm in thickness, which is pretty insane when you consider the fact that current Pro iPhones are 8.25mm in thickness. Now, if you're worried about how durability is going to be with such a thin device, do remember the M4 iPad Pro is actually thinner than the iPhone 17 Air's rumored thickness, and that really had no bending issues as such, and so I'm sure Apple can do their engineering magic to prevent another Bendgate situation. Now, because it's so thin, there will be compromises with the specs. For example, we're expecting this to come with one single camera on the back instead of dual or triple cameras, like we've come to expect. And this single lens will be a 48MP camera that I'm assuming is going to be similar to the current iPhone 16 main camera. To be honest, that's a non-issue. The ultra-wide is nice to have, but it's a softer lens compared to the main, and it's pretty niche because not everyone's going to use it on a regular basis. Plus, because you're getting a 48MP camera, you get the option for a 2x telephoto crop, which makes up for the lack of a telephoto lens. And also, there's not going to be a monstrous camera bump on this, which is always very nice. You know what else would be nice? If you subscribe to the channel, of course. It's free and it'll bring you the latest about Apple right to your subscription box, so please consider it. It would be appreciated. Join the Saranbyte gang now. Anyway, the size of the iPhone 17 Air is expected to be right in between the regular and Pro Max size option at 6.6 inches. So in a way, it's similar to the iPhone 10 that was in between the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, and this phone will be packing the regular A19 with 8 gigs of RAM, as well as a new 24MP selfie camera, which piques my interest because it's been a while since the front-facing camera got any sort of upgrades. Now, I know some might be a little confused by this product because its specs will be closer to that of a regular iPhone, or actually worse in some cases, but also has a design that's superior to every other iPhone, so whose is actually for? Well, here's the thing guys, since phones have kind of matured and reached their peak functionality wise, there may be consumers who are interested in a device that puts form over function, and so I'm guessing Apple's betting on that market being big enough for the 17 Air to be a success. Do remember, by the way, this could actually be more expensive than a Pro Max. Last we heard it could be around $11.99, and so in some ways this product reminds me of the 12-inch MacBook because that was also overpriced for the specs it offered, but my god was the chassis beautiful, and it was a revolutionary design for its time. And so this seems to be the iPhone version of that, but hopefully the compromises this time are justified and a non-issue for the radically thinner design. By the way, I have seen some theories that this iPhone 17 Air might just be a flip phone, and that's why Apple's focusing on its thinness because it will have to fold. Honestly, that could explain why this is more expensive and has some compromises on the specs, because obviously Apple will be charging a high price for the foldable display, but I'm not sure flip phones are ready to go mainstream. I know we've had these for a while. The original Z Flip launched all the way back in 2020, so yeah, it's been 4 years, but these displays haven't actually dramatically improved when it comes to durability. There's still plastic displays that are very easy to break, and so for a company like Apple to sell foldable, the technology has to get to a point where millions and millions of users can use these phones for years without any issues. Remember, Apple sells a lot more iPhones than Samsung sells foldables, and so whilst I could see Apple selling a foldable in the future once the displays get better, I don't see it happening right now. Anyway, for the 120Hz nerds out there, there is fantastic news because the regular 17 and 17 are expected to have 120Hz ProMotion panels. Yes, I know everyone's going to be saying in unison, it's about time Apple, thank you for catching up to 2018 Android phones. But I don't know guys, this seems too good to be true. Especially this year, I felt there was not that much of a reason to go for the Pro phones. The regular 16 already offered 95% of the same experience, and so one of the few advantages the Pro phones have right now, coming down to the regular iPhone, is going to make it even harder to justify the Pro. And so I see two things happening guys. Either displays on the Pro phones get an upgrade, like maybe a higher refresh rate or high brightness, or the regular phones get 90Hz that could be dubbed Air Motion. In fact, one report had suggested the iPad Air is getting 90Hz next year, and so I wouldn't be surprised if Apple's mid-tier products stick to 90Hz. I know the difference between 90Hz and 120Hz is not that massive, but it all comes down to marketing at the end of the day, and if one phone says it has an Air Motion display and the other says it has a Pro Motion display, I know some are gonna go for the Pro because it sounds cooler. Another way they could differentiate the displays on the regular and Pro models is by software locking the always on display for the Pros, and honestly I wouldn't care if Apple did this because I turned off the AOD on my 14 Pro Max since it was a massive battery hog. Let's now move on to the Pro phones because we have some early details on what to expect with those. So for one, we can apparently expect a 48 megapixel telephoto lens, which means every lens on the Pro models will now be 48 megapixels. Wow, those are many pickles. And we can also expect an upgrade with digital zoom as well. The 24 megapixel front-facing camera I also mentioned is coming to the Pros, so I'm assuming that's a change that applies to the whole iPhone 17 range. And we can apparently expect 12 gigs of RAM on next year's Pro phones to give them the headroom needed for Apple's new favorite thing, AI. Now in previous years, Apple has introduced specific features to the Pro Max first. Usually it's a camera upgrade, but surprisingly this year the Halo feature might be a smaller dynamic island. Apple's allegedly adopting a new meta lens. What in the Mark Zuckerberg is that? But anyways, because of this, Apple can now give us a smaller cutout on the front, and so we can expect it to look something like this. Now I'm fine with them bringing this change to the 17 Pro. A smaller cutout is always appreciated, but it is a bit weird that bringing this to the Pro Max, and so this could be the first time the Pro and Pro Max actually look visually different. I'm gonna be honest guys, the addition of the 17 Air and now the Pro Max having this Halo upgrades is really making the range quite confusing to understand. And so as I've said in the past, I think Apple should go back to 3 iPhone models. Maybe once they can bring the new design, the Alphas, down in price, that just becomes a new regular iPhone, and then of course we continue having 2 Pro phones that ideally have the same specs. Essentially the iPhone 11 range is what Apple should be doing today, where the regular model is right in between the Pro and Pro Max, size-wise. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching. Right guys, we have more evidence we're getting a new base iPad in early 2025 because, courtesy of Ross Young, we have details that display shipments for the new base iPads are beginning as we speak, and usually these shipments happen a few months ahead of the actual release date, and so as rumors have been pointing towards, we can expect a March or April release date.